Hey, hello everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today I am going to, well, I think the word is tackle uh, the curious case of Natalia Grace. This show just came out on HBO Max. I was asked to look at this case by numerous people, especially those who had known that I have a very similar situation in my life, that I also did adopt a child at the age of 6. So I am familiar with adopting an older child and the situations that come with doing that and the adoption system and all that. So, yes, it's going to be a little bit personal to me today. Um, yeah. Okay. So anyway, um, what I want to talk about first of all is this came out on HBO Max. So I got my subscription to Max for this purpose, and this is one of the most despicable quote documentaries I have ever seen. And when people ask me why I do so few documentaries anymore, it's because of things like this. Um, the producers of certain documentaries don't have any concern for the truth. They don't do a lot of work and research. They're looking for essentially reality TV. They want people to be shocked. They want people to be appalled. They don't care about the actual story as much as they care about people's reaction to the story. So yes, I watched this 6-part series and I wanted to throw up through most of it. Um, and So I'm going to get into how I did my research on this subject of Natalia Grace. Before I go forward and welcome everybody into the chat room, um, I do want to point out that I often use Wikipedia simply as an outline for my shows. She doesn't have a Wikipedia page, and I'm not quite sure why. So I looked it up, and it said here in this one uh, here on the internet, says Natalia Grace is a Ukrainian orphan who was adopted by a couple from Indiana in 2010. She doesn't yet have a Wikipedia page, which is true. Read this article to find out more about her. Let me give you the simplest basics. Michael and Christine Barnett. These are the two people here. Michael and Christine Barnett. They adopted her in 2010 from, she was born in the Ukraine. Uh, she was actually adopted by another couple prior to these people adopting her, but she did come from the Ukraine. And they adopted her, and then they asserted that she had a form of dwarfism. Okay, so she's a little person, but they believed after they adopted her that she wasn't. She was a little person. They didn't object to the fact that she was a dwarf, had dwarfism. What they said was she was an adult disguising herself as a child. Okay, that because of her dwarfism, it was hard to determine her actual age. They began to believe that she was actually an adult, not a child, and that she started acting maliciously. They claimed that she tried to hurt them and their biological children, which gave then. So after that, after they decided that she was going to harm their family, what they did was get her aged up. They went to a number of people, a number of professionals, who then determined that she was way older than her birth certificate, which was 2003. So then they said, oh, no, that's not when she was born. She's really in her 20s. And they moved her to a house, an apartment, and left her there on her own. And they eventually got charged with basically neglect and desertion of a child, but that all failed in the court system. So these two were not convicted of any crimes. They're off on their own today, and Natalia is with a different family. So that's the basics of this, the very basics. Okay. So now, how do I get to the truth of all of this? Because this is one of the most bizarre cases I've ever run into. And what we have here is unreliable narrators. And if you're not familiar with what that term is, sometimes when a book is written and it's written from the protagonist's point of view, in other words, I'm going to tell you my story. I, and they go on. And then you say, are they telling me the truth or are they lying to me? Are they manipulating me? Then they become an unreliable narrator. They're narrating a story, but really not sure if they're telling the truth. This story has so many unreliable narrators, it's ridiculous. HBO, this thing called a documentary, is 100% unreliable narration. We have no clue if anything the producers are putting together has any validity whatsoever, because they don't bother with proving that they're telling the truth, and they don't bother with doing research in a credible methodology. So they're just putting together stuff that's supposed to appall and shock and all that kind of stuff and make you go, oh, I wonder what's true. What is it? They don't care about the truth. So they're an unreliable narrator. Then we have Natalia, who is now older than, well, she was claimed she was already an adult here, but that she's now truly close to being an adult. Is she a reliable narrator? There's a few places where she tells her story. I'll tell you that in a minute. And there's going to be a show coming up this summer where Natalia gets to tell her story, and that's the ID channel. So I'm sure we can and we can trust them, right? So that'll be another unreliable narrator. So we don't know if this, again, the producers are going to edit the living crap out of it. We can't determine whether there's any truth there or whether she herself is telling the truth. Then we have these people, the Barnetts. Are they telling the truth? Or are they also unreliable narrators telling their story? And people like to say these days, they're telling their truths. There's no such thing as their truths or our truth or my truth. There's only the truth, and the rest of it is a pack of lies. So we don't actually know what they're saying is true or not either. So we have a tremendous amount of unreliable narrators. So I'm going to have to approach this from the whole point that I don't have an exact clue where the facts are. And let me tell you, I did look for those stupid facts, and they're not out there. It's amazing how much stuff seems to be non-existent. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look at where we're at. All right. So let me see now. All right. We have a lot of people in the chat room. Miranda's here, Rose is here, Joe is here, Lex is here. Lex, I want to say thank you and good morning to you, because Lex wrote a really long and excellent, I want to say, message to me. And Lex is one of our new patrons. Thank you for being here. And if you'd like to be in the chat room, please do go below, click on the description, and you can join Patreon. All my chat rooms are patron only, but every one of my videos is open to the public. But if you want to be here for the live part, you got to join Patreon, and that helps support the channel and also has a really nice group for us. But Lex, thank you for writing this. And so many things you wrote in here were just, it's exactly the problem. You wrote a thing, you said it's about the weirdest thing you've ever heard. I'm with you on that. It said, I'm always asking every step of the way, what do they want or have to gain? Why to any of it really doesn't seem to add up for anybody. And this is very, very true. It's so confusing. I might get to some of the other questions you had. But absolutely 100% confusing. So thank you, Lex, for sending me that. Midgie is also here. Miranda's here. Lisa S. is here. Chikun is here. Florence is here. Kelly is here. Annie is here. Aisha is here. Midgie's here. Sky Rick is here. We have a large group. Christine is here. Lauren's here. Kate Klein is here. Rose is here. I'm going to start repeating names because I get confused about this point. Martin is here. Let's see who else is here. Lila is here. Joe is here. And now I can't see out of my glasses. Whew. All right. Annie Haley is here. Anybody else? If I missed you, I'm really, really sorry. And I'm sure more people are coming in. But I just want to let you know. Thank you. Marianne is here. Marianne is here. All right. So, all right. Let me see what I can tell you about this whole production. All right. I want to start out by letting you know, and by the way, I'm going to put a lot of links in the description. The links are in the description in order to help you. By the way, I want to ask, is anybody seeing a whole lot of glitching going on? Because I'm seeing glitching. And if that's happening, I'm going to, I want to ask you that right now. I had this problem last time. I'm seeing tons of glitching. And I'm not sure why. What are you seeing glitching? I may pull out and then Come back in 15 minutes if this is true. So are you seeing a lot of glitching? So I think that's why there isn't a Wikipedia, because it's so confused. No glitching on your end, really? All right, okay. I'm not going to disappear then. I'm seeing it here. I've had some weird technical issues recently, and I just hate to do a whole show and have it completely be garbage. So I'm not sure what the heck is going on. Fascinating. All right, all fine. All right, I'm glad to see that because I'm not seeing it on this end. All right, cool. All right, let me go ahead now. All right, then, therefore, all right, there's no Wikipedia page because it's so bloody confusing. They don't know what to put on the page. All right, this is probably true. All right, what? Sometimes when I do shows, people ask me, actually accuse me. Well, did you do your proper research? Okay, and I always tell them, look, this is a YouTube show. It's an educational show. This is, I'm trying to help people understand how to think through processes as a profiler. I'm not here to give you I'm not going to spend 1,000 hours and give you the most conclusive show ever. I'm not writing a book. So that's not what's happening here. So what did I look at to do this show? All right. So I'll tell you what I looked at. Oh my God. I actually ended up doing way more than I ever intended to do. Let me tell you, I did. Here we go. Okay, so I did watch the 6-part series. And one of the interesting things about this was they adopted Natalia, the couple, the Barnetts, in 2010. But in 2009, this movie came out called Orphan. And it was creepily very similar to the whole case of Natalia Grace. So supposedly this family adopted this little girl from an orphanage. She turned out to be a Russian orphan. And by the end of the show, after she kills pretty much a whole bunch of people, she turns out to be a 33-year-old and not a child. And then a year later, the Barnetts adopt Natalia and have a very similar situation as this movie. One of the questions that drove me crazy was that why does nobody ask the Barnetts? Did they see this movie prior to the adoption or at some point while they had the child in their home? Why do I ask this? Because this case, if you started having questions about the child you adopted, this case can have the movie can have an impact on you. It can affect your mind. You can start saying, oh my God, is that true for me too? So I wanted to know, did they see this movie and did it affect their view of the child they had adopted? And I never got that question answered. There's another show, movie from way back, 1956, The Bad Seed. It's creepy as all get out. It turns out she's not an adopted child, but her mother was adopted, and they're claiming in this particular show that it could be genetic. Let's see, how does it work? The woman who had this child, she was adopted, and her own mother, biological mother, turned out to be a killer. So she was appalled at the thought that possibly that her own daughter had genetically inherited her biological mother's genes and was a bad seed. And this child was a killer. Well, she turned out to be a killer. So she was a creepy kid. Okay. So we had this movie, which is very famous and quite well done. This is excellent. This is not quite as well done, but interesting. But Natalia Grace, when the Barnetts adopted her in 2010, you say to yourself, were they influenced by this movie or even possibly by this movie? And nobody asked the questions. I would have done so. And not because I'm trying to say, hey, she's just like this or this, but did this influence you? When you looked at this child, did it have some kind of effect on you? Did it make you think maybe she's older than it's claimed? Maybe the paperwork was fudged. Maybe she's got bad genetics. I wanted to know this, and nobody bothered to ask the question because, in my opinion, that whole 6-part series was garbage. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about the Barnetts and the adoption process on this. So Oh, and let me tell you what. So anyway, I watched all three of these. By the way, I watched the documentary, if they want to call it that. I call it a crockumentary, but all right. I watched this movie, and I did watch this movie because I wanted to see what kind of influence it could have had on the adoptive parents of Natalia. But I also looked at a bunch of other things, which are going to be linked below because I think they're worthwhile looking at. One is Dr. Phil's interview. Dr. Phil did this interview. Here he is with Natalia, and he goes in and he asks her the questions. Are you an adult pretending to be a child? Very interesting interview. So take a look at that one. That's worth doing. Then there's this one. At some point, Natalia visited this family of other small people. I'll get into that later. Of a couple who had dwarfism, and their daughter also has dwarfism, and she stayed with them on weekends, and they were considering adopting her prior to the Barnetts. And here she is with their daughter, and it says the girl's now 14. She has fond memories of the Ukrainian orphans. That's very interesting. Then we have two videos from actually Natalia Grace herself as a theoretical teenager. Here is an intro for her new channel. That's one of them. And the next one is Vlog Day 1 Halloween edition, and she's getting ready for Halloween. Very interesting to watch, and I'll get into why I think they were really interesting vlogs. She only did two. I don't know why she quit at that point, but she only did two, but they show her as a supposed teenager. So I think you should be looking at that and saying, what do you think? Does she seem like a teenager? Or does she seem like at that point, a 20-some-year-old? All right. And also, I did also read this book. This is The Spark. This is written by the adoptive mother, Christine Barnett. It's called A Mother's Story of Nurturing Genius and Autism. Now, this is about her oldest son, Jacob. He was diagnosed with autism when he was small, when he was a toddler, and then he became like this incredible genius, and he has done just amazing stuff. I mean, he is brilliant, and done TED Talks and all this kind of stuff. So she became famous. The family became famous off of Jacob Barnett. And what's interesting about this book is that it tells the story of autism, how she dealt with her son Jacob, how she helped him to become, to become who he is. But she never mentions Natalia, even though Natalia was actually there during the last years before she wrote this book. Natalia vanishes from the story. I'll get into why I think that is. All right. So who are these people? All right. We have Christine Barnett and Michael Barnett. They got married. Interesting enough, Christine Barnett in her book talks about the fact that she actually is Amish descent, what she calls city Amish, that her family isn't old order Amish, no, but they're new order Amish. So she grew up with a quite religious background, but with electricity and more of a modern lifestyle, which is just interesting to me because that's a very unique background. Michael Barnett, apparently she met him. She already had a boyfriend, but whatever reason, she fell for him and they got married happily ever after until they got divorced. All right. Now in this Natalia Grace documentary, we see an awful lot of Michael Barnett, the father, the adoptive father. And he, like, some people say he just took over the whole documentary. Essentially, that they just lost control to Michael Barnett. I'm going to say that's not true. I've worked with enough documentaries to know they used Michael Barnett. They didn't lose control. Looks like maybe he's in all these scenes and he's very dramatic. No, they like that. That's why they're there. They edit the living hell out of documentaries. So for the amount of hours that they took, I'm going to be sure that they provoked, encouraged, and planned, and then edited to exactly what they wanted. So no, the documentary people are responsible for everything that's in it. The mom, Christine Barnett, is not in the documentary except for she walks by the camera once during a court thing. And they asked her this. When asked for comment regarding her role in the events depicted in this program, Christine had this to say: "Your network is whack." I totally agree with her. 100% agree with Christine Barnett. Yeah, she has every right to say that. It's whack. Okay. When I read her book, what's interesting to me is I really like this book. If you had a child who's autistic, this book is fabulous. Um, I agree with so much of what she says. I did not catch a lot of disingenuous stuff. I didn't see things in there that made me not like her or question that. Sometimes when I read one of these books, I'm like, yeah, that person's narcissistic as hell. They're psychopathic. It doesn't come across in this book. I find her very genuine, which is interesting because in the documentary, they show the few things they show of her aren't very nice. I show her acting and doing sexual stuff through photos and with texting to people. They say they show her as very cold-hearted, and yet you don't get any of this in the book, which is interesting to me. But I'm going to get back to that as well. All right, what else do I want to talk about as far as this couple? All right, let me show you who they are. All right. I do like that comment. The network is whack. All right, this is Michael Barnett. He says in the show, most of it. Oh my God, Michael Barnett. He is so over the top in the show. He's a 100% drama queen, outrageous, excessive. What he shows to me is histrionic personality disorder. In case you're wondering what that is. Let me give you a little heads up on that, just so you can understand what that is. What is histrionic personality disorder? One of the 10 personality disorders in the DSM, that's the psychiatric book. It means dramatic or theatrical, derives from the word hysteria. Now, interesting enough, it's usually applied to women. Almost all the people who have been labeled with histrionic personality disorder are women, yet this is a guy. All right. What it shows is that, what are their symptoms? Excessively dramatic. Oh my God, if you watch this show, the guy's all over the place. Exaggerated displays of intense emotion. He can cry on a dime. I mean, like, I want to cry. Hey, look, it's a piece of cardboard. Cry. He's like, it's a cardboard. The guy cries like you wouldn't believe. Self-centered, totally. Uncomfortable and not the center of attention. He wants everything to be about him. This is true. Dramatic. Oh my God, yes. Vague manner of speaking. He's like all over the place. Inappropriately seductive appearance or behavior. Sometimes you wonder, he says things that are just like off the wall bizarre. Like he accuses of his ex-wife, because they got divorced, of sexually abusing him because she wouldn't give him sex. What? Overly concerned with physical appearance. Oh my God, he's really, really well dressed. He likes to look good. Okay. Easily influenced by other people. Anything somebody says to him, he jumps right on board. If you see him with his lawyers, by the way, his lawyers are totally despicable human beings as well. Defense lawyers, you are the worst. I mean, you may be good lawyers, but you're the slimiest lawyers I've ever seen. Just disgusting. Tends to believe the relationships are more intimate than they actually are. So when he hooked up with his wife, okay, the question I have here for him is, what kind of relationship do they really have? She definitely did seem to be in control. He seemed to be the one who ran around like her pet dog. Okay, that's kind of my opinion. Now, that can be a relationship that many marriages have, that there's one person in control and the other person kind of feeds into that. Now, the funny thing about Michael Barnett is that when I look through some of the comments, I don't know how many people said, oh, my gaydar is just ringing here. You know, in other words, most people thought he was gay. As a matter of fact, one comment, which I thought was kind of funny, was that they said that he's so far in the closet, he found Narnia, which made me laugh. He's so far in the closet, he found Narnia. So he's an interesting character. I'm not going to say anything. I don't know what he's about. But now he's divorced from the wife, the mother, and he says terrible things about her. She's a massively abusive person, the most horrible person on the planet. But prior to the divorce, she was the best person on the planet. And she said the same about him in her book. So there's these parents, these people, I don't know. There's a lot of things about them that are concerning. But Christine Barnett, let's take a look at a couple pictures of them. Here we go. Okay, that's him in one of his fancy suits with his defense lawyers. But okay, let's go on here. Okay, here they are. They're happy together. And here they are with the three boys. They have Jacob, the brilliant one. And then the second one had some Aspergery symptoms. And the third one, Christine says, just was perfect. And just like in a sense that he was so, after she was exhausted by dealing with what she had to deal with, the third one was like really easy. And I understand that sometimes you have more difficult kids and easier children. She not only took care of her three children, she ended up homeschooling them. She had a daycare as well. And she started doing a lot of work with autistic kids. She comes across as somebody who can handle a whole lot of stuff. And this is important. I do not understand that if she brought Natalia into her home, why suddenly a person who could deal with autism, a person who could deal with daycare kids, suddenly can't deal with this one child. Why? And so I'm going to get into that because that is one of the more interesting things about this case. So anyway, so here they are with the three kids. Then 2010, they adopted Natalia. Why did they do this? According to Christine, basically is that, hey, we got three boys. We like to help a kid who needs help. And we came across Natalia. And her husband says the same thing, Michael. We came across Natalia, and here's a child with dwarfism who needs a home. We they have three boys. They can have a girl. It sounds awesome, doesn't it? So they adopt her. Here they are. They're adopting this child now. And they look happy, and there they are. This is in the courtroom. They've adopted Natalia. They're smiling. They're happy. And then here they are. They are with the family with Natalia. And here's another picture of them all together. And Jacob, who's the oldest, said he really liked Natalia. And here they all are. Everything's dandy. Or is it? So they bring her home, and after they bring her home, then the problems start. Okay, at least the claim is the problems start. By the way, this is just interesting. Where's my other picture? My other picture disappeared. Hold on, don't find it. There is a. Hold on. Oh, here it is. This is Jacob. Jacob grew up to be, he's on TED Talk, and my God, the kid is delightful and happy and all this kind of stuff. And after everything went to hell in the family, here he is in the basement of his father's house. And he's in the show. So it's just kind of sad. I don't know if his life is as bad as the show makes out, but it doesn't do a lot. But anyway, they bring the child home, and here they are. Here's Natalia here and sitting around the house. There's another photo of her. She looks kind of creepy there. And let's see. Oh, and here's an interesting one they show on the show that they're saying, why are you reading the Bible? Oh, to get rid of these evil thoughts. That's used in the show to show that she's maybe an evil child, because that's what they're trying to prove. That she's creepy. All right. They start out, the first two shows start out showing, oh my God, she's this creepy child. Why is that? Why is that? It says here, the left photo, 2010, was taken when the Barnetts adopted 6.5-year-old Natalia. Right photo is in 2013, taken 2 months after the Barnetts abandoned the 9.5-year-old Natalia in a second-floor apartment. Okay. Now you say, if you haven't seen the show, what the heck? How would they abandon this child? All right. Okay, let me try to explain the trajectory of this whole story, because it is one weird trajectory. She was born in the Ukraine. She was an orphan. Supposedly her mother, who they found later on after the show, had another child, but then she had this child, and this child was a dwarf. So the doctor said, hey, you don't want to waste your time with this kid, because this kid's it's not going to go well. Just give her up now. So supposedly at birth, she gave the child up. The child goes to an orphanage, where she remains until she's 4 years old. At 4 years old, an American couple from New Hampshire finds out about her through some agency, goes to Ukraine, picks her up, brings her back to New Hampshire. They adopt her. She's supposedly 4 years old. She's there for 2 years. And then during those 2 years, at some point after the 2 years, they decide they didn't want her anymore. During the Dr. Phil show, Natalia says that they told her that she tried to break the other child's arm, their son's arm, and they'd had enough, and so they got rid of her. All right. So the first family, so supposedly she's 4 years old when she leaves the Ukraine. She's with a family for 2 years, and they get rid of her. There's a couple questions of how they found a new family for her. There's some issue over, and this is what's so frustrating. The whole show doesn't go into anything that's worthwhile understanding the whole situation. When they wanted to get rid of her, once they had legitimately adopted her, how did they get rid of her? They went through supposedly some sort of agency, but there was something about a $25,000 fee. Now, there was a couple that wanted to adopt her. This couple, they were also people who had dwarfism. They lived in this home with their daughter who had dwarfism, and they used to hang out together. The girls used to hang out together on certain weekends while they were trying to theoretically adopt her. Here they are, the girls hanging out. Here they are, Natalia and their daughter hanging out. Doesn't they look happy together? So the question would be, why the heck? Why didn't they adopt her? They would seem to be the perfect family. We never find out why. Is it that I hear later that there's some $25,000 fee that the original adoptive family is looking for? Did they not have $25,000? But anyway, they didn't adopt her. There was another family, I think in Texas, who was interested in adopting her. They didn't adopt her either. But the Barnetts adopted her. Did they have the $25,000 bucks? Did they have money to go for surgeries and stuff that she would need in the future? It's very vague as to why they adopted her. But after 2 years with the first family who dumped her, they went through this agency that sounds sketchy as hell, which again is not pursued in this documentary. I want to know more about this crappy agency. Supposedly they show up at this agency and their agency's like, you got like 24 hours, you got to make a decision. You take the kid or you don't. And they go, okay. And then Natalia runs through the door and says, Mommy, Daddy, and everything's happy. And they go off to Disney World and they adopt her. And that's that. So my question is here, first of all, something's really sketchy about the whole adoption process and her age. So but the Barnetts end up with her. They think she's 6.5. Okay. At this point, that's what they think. She's 6.5 years old. Is she? This becomes a big issue because supposedly she's behaving in a way that creeps them out. All right. That makes them think she may not be 6 years old because that's what she's supposed to be, but they're thinking she's acting way older than that. All right, hold on a second. Let me see one. Okay. I want to find one of the pictures here. Okay, this is the picture of the people. Oh, that's a terrible picture. I screwed that one up. I screwed that one up. What's going on here? All right. No, I screwed that up completely. Something's wrong with my whole picture. One of those days. Anyway, so I had the thing wrongly, so now half the show is going to be crooked. That's one of those days. All right. So anyway, was she 6 when they got her, or wasn't she? Supposedly they bring her home, and Christine has her in a bathtub, and she's giving her a bath, and she sees the child has pubic hair, and she's only 6, and she's like, "Oh my God, what the heck is this?" Later on, Christine, the adoptive mother, also says she thought she was hiding evidence of having a period. So she believes she's older. So they start taking her to different people, doctors, mental health professionals. Now, mind you, what is interesting about this whole thing is that when she writes her book, the book I spoke of that she writes, the book called The Spark. Christine Barnett is very, very used to dealing with professionals. She's dealt with autism. She's dealt with doctors. She's dealt with physical therapy people. She's dealt with every kind of therapy you can think of in the system. and what they seem to portray in the movie is that she's not really dealing with many people at all. They're just making this decision on the fly and saying, hey, she's really 20 some years old. Hey, we want to get rid of her. And therefore, we're going to put her in an apartment, dump her at 9 years old, which is the claim. The claim is supposedly at 9 years old, well, actually at 8, they put her in this apartment house. They dumped her there by herself, saying they kept claiming she's trying to kill our children. She showed up in our bedroom with a knife in her hand. She's taking our children's toys and throwing them into traffic so they will chase them into traffic and get hit by cars. She tried to put poison in drinks that Christine was adoptive mother was drinking, that she tried to push her adoptive mother into electric fence. There's these claims. So supposedly they get so freaked out. They go to all these people and they go to the court system and get her aged up to 20 some years old. And they put her in the first place, which is a little apartment complex, 1 floor, so she can walk around. And she stays there for a year, but she creeps out a lot of people that live there. They say she's wandering into their houses. She's acting inappropriately. And so after a year, they throw her out. So they get another place for her. The second place they get for her is this house. And the claim here is they dumped her here because they wanted to run off to Canada to take their genius son, Jacob, and because he was offered a deal up in Canada for schooling and other things. So they dumped him and they all moved to Canada without her. They put her on the 2nd floor, which made it difficult for her to get up and down the stairs. And nothing there was, small enough, low enough for a small person to deal with. So she would have difficulty cooking. She would have difficulty doing anything. Supposedly, originally that the Michael Barnett, the adoptive father, came by every week, brought food and all that kind of stuff. But the claim was that she was an adult. Therefore, they were trying to provide a place for her to stay as an adult. Down the street was a GED place where she could get her education. And there was a place also close by she could walk to that she could get food and stuff. So they were supposedly taking care of her as an adult. But how well is the question, and was she really an adult? Or was she a 9-year-old who was dumped and 9-year-old trying to fend for herself? So the question comes down to, was she 9? Now, according to when they got her aged up, you can see this. This is her ID card. It says she was born in 1989. So she was not 9 years old in 2000. The date when she got this card was 2012. So clearly she would not have been 9 years old at the time she got this card. But the claim is that's just simply not true. She was actually born in 2003. And therefore she was a child. That the mother, the birth mother in Ukraine, they finally found her. And she said, no, it's 2003. Now, I want to point out something else here. Let me see if I can find it. Anna, her birth mother, says she was abandoned at the age of 13, alone in an apartment. Okay, now we have a problem. Was it 9 or was it 13? All right. And it's 13, okay. Now, I'm going to take a step back now, because this is all very confusing. There are a bunch of questions here. One is, what was her age? Did they have the right to dump her? And why did they dump her? Why didn't the system? Why was there something in the system that could prevent that? Why did the system actually age her up into the 20s? Why would the system age her to 22 to make her an adult? Why would the system do that if it wasn't true? And 3, is she a psychopath? Is the child a psychopath or not? Okay. Now, let's go back to the aging up. Was she, when the Barnetts got her, was she 6 years old? I'm going to say this. They took her to doctors. The doctors, they got bone scans and stuff. The bone scans tended to put her 2 or 3 or 4 years older. She also supposedly had pubic hair, which puts her, it could be early puberty, but still could put her at 9, 10. That's still early enough. She may have seemed smarter than she should have been for 6. Was she born in 2003? Now, here's what I know. First of all, she came from the Ukraine. She was in an orphanage. You get a kid in an orphanage. She's, first of all, she's a little person. All right. She's a dwarf. It's hard enough to get rid of a kid who's 4 years old, but it's harder to get rid of a kid who's a dwarf. Now I say the word rid, and you can jump me on that, but that's the way they're thinking. Hard to find a home because the kid's 4 and a dwarf. Or is the kid 4 and a dwarf? Or has the problem come down to is that when a child is under, not school age, they're more attractive to people. When they get to school age and above, they become less attractive to people in the adoption process. If that child had reached 8 years old and they still couldn't get rid of her, they may well have moved her birth date back from 8 years old to 4 years old in order to try to find her a home. They figure she's small anyway, no one will know the difference. So do I believe that the Ukraine would be telling the truth or lying? I don't know. They've been known to be squirrely before when it comes to adoption processes. Her mother claimed she was 13 when she was left. That is 4 years older. Did the mother, is this a misinterpretation, mistranslation? The mother screw up? Or does the mother know that the date was fudged slightly? I don't believe for a minute that Natalia was an adult when she came to the Barnetts. Why don't I believe that? One of the reasons is if you actually go and look at some of these pictures, when she was visiting with a little girl who was also a dwarf on the weekends, she had things like missing teeth. She did. She doesn't look that much older than her in all the photos. But most importantly to me, when I looked at the videos she did, she comes across, in this video, she's a teenager. She comes across as a teenager. She does not come across as anybody older. All her language, all her expressions, everything. I can't get her to be more than that much more. So I think either she was that proper age that was on a birth certificate, or she was somewhere between that and 4 years older. Now, if this is important because the Barnetts, if they're going to get a kid who they think is 6, but there's things about her that are creeping them out, pubic hair and maybe periods and maybe behaviors that they just don't see as 6. Now they're like, well, this kid's a dwarf. We just don't know whether the kid is really that age or really not that age. Are we being screwed over? If the child showed odd behaviors, which a child coming out of foster care, orphanages, numerous homes often does, did they become frightened of her? And is it unrealistic that it would have been? They go to seek some information on how old she is, and somebody is willing to say, hey, maybe she is an adult. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll find her a place to live. And maybe the reason she could survive was because she wasn't 9, but she was 13. A 13-year-old can survive in an apartment. And it doesn't mean they're happy about it, but they can do that. As a matter of fact, a 9-year-old probably could survive as well, as long as they had food and a place to stay. They could manage. I mean, I say it's not a healthy thing, but they could do it. So the question comes down to, why did the Barnetts end up in this situation? All right, now, just to go to a personal thing on this, because I say I have such a similar situation. So my husband and I, we had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and then I had a tubal pregnancy and lost that child. I could not have any more children. We tried to adopt a child, not a baby, because we thought, well, we already have babies, so we should get a child that needs a home. My husband is Black, I'm white. We went to the agencies, and they actually told us that we could only adopt a child that was mixed race, had to be biracial, had to look like the other 2 kids. And we're like, we don't care. But they were like, oh, no, it's like we had a paint chip on us. We had the right color to match the kid. It's like, so we had to mix our colors and come up with the right one. We thought it was ridiculous. And we were so appalled by the behavior of the agencies that we just gave up. And so time went on, and I never thought about it anymore. And then when my kids were now, my daughter was 7, my son was 5. My friend, who happened to be a therapist, was going to another therapist, and that therapist had been seeing this kid, and this kid had been just dumped by the people that he was being adopted by. So similar to the Natalia case. He had been in foster care since he was born. He had really nice foster parents. They were more like foster grandparents because they were quite elderly. They cared about him and they loved him, but they had lots of kids in the house, like an orphanage. And then when he got to be about 4 years old, they found a family for him. He was a black child. They found a black family who had 2 girls, and they took him. And from the area that he was from, the state he was coming from, you had to be in foster care for a year before you could do the adoption, which I used to be angry about, but now I sort of semi-understand that, considering the Natalia case. The child stays with the family for a year to see if it works, essentially, which in a way is kind of mean, because when you take a child in, it's like, oh, you're here only on, like, we'll decide whether we like you enough. And that's kind of cruel. I mean, to me, that's kind of wrong. But on the other hand, if there's something wrong with the child or wrong with the parents, maybe the child shouldn't be there. So it's one of those mixed things. So anyway, he went. My son went to a family. They had him for a year. And right before Christmas, after a year was about up, they decided they did not want to adopt him, that he wasn't smart enough, in their opinion. They had these 2 girls that they had raised, and the girls were perfect little girls, and he was a child coming out of a difficult situation. So he had certain behaviors which were more like attachment disorders behaviors, which were, when you don't connect as well. And they decided they felt uncomfortable with him. And they sent him back to foster care. Now he became 5 years old. At 5 years old, you become a thing called, in the United States, 5E eligible, which means you're unadoptable. Quote, 5 years old, black, 5 years old, black. I'm just forgetting now what all the things are. Oh boy, boys aren't as adoptable as girls. So you're a boy. You're not white. You're black. You are at an age which they think is now you're school age, and people don't like that. And also you have learning disabilities, which you usually just have because you've been in a situation which hasn't helped you get a good education. So you're 5E eligible, and you become, quote, unadoptable, which she may have been. So if she's in Ukraine and had reached the age where she was, quote, unadoptable, not because she was a girl, which adopting people like, but now she was getting too old. She had disability, which was dwarfism. Yeah. So she might have, I don't know what their rules are there and what their little labels are, but they might have had a label of unadoptable on her too. And they thought, well, if we can just drop her age, in other words, if she reached 8, they could drop her age to 4. She'd be under school age. She'd be more adoptable. So I question whether they would have done that. All right. So now what happens when a person goes and adopts a child who's already been in 2 other homes? So she had already been in a home in New Hampshire for 2 years, and the people sent her away. Why? Was it because she was showing evidence of psychopathy? Was it because she had some part of being have attachment disorder? Was it because she didn't live up to their expectations as a child that if they'd raised from birth would have lived up to? Who knows? She was dumped by that family, found it to find another family. They got rid of her. My son, same thing. He was with a family for a year, and they decided they preferred not to have him. It's interesting because they were actually the parents worked as I think at that time the adoptive mother was she worked with children with special needs. Go figure, But they changed their mind, and so he came into. So my friend said, "Hey, Pat, you want to adopt this child?" Because my therapist told me, and she's a therapist, and she probably shouldn't have said anything, but she was really upset because she said the boy's really, really nice, and we're really pissed off. She's really pissed off this family, sending him back to foster care. So she thought of us, and I don't know why, because we actually hadn't talked about having another child. But she thought of us because my husband was black and whatever. But anyway, so she told us about it. So we met him. And we decided to go ahead with the adoption. And we had to do the 1 year foster care before we could legally adopt. And we said yes. Okay. So And the fun, the social worker brought him to the house. There's our son in the middle, Jeremy, and there's our son David, which was kind of a terrible joke at the time because a week before the social worker came to the house, my son David had a horrible bicycle accident at the home of the pastor who was staying overnight with. It was a freak accident. And he's okay now, but he had to go and get 5 hours worth of reconstructive surgery. But when the social worker showed up, I'm like, oh, and here's what we do to the kids in this house. I'm surprised he left our adoptive son with us. But anyway, he did. So we had him for a year before we adopted him. During that year, about 6 months, he never smiled. And he had some odd behaviors. Here's a child who lost the home he lived in for 4 years with his wonderful foster parents. But they thought they couldn't. They thought he should have a home because they were quite elderly. They thought they should have a home with a family that was younger. They tried to do the right thing by him. But, still for a child, he still lost the home he was used to. Then he goes to some home and spends a year with these people and they dump him. Now he's with us. Does he believe we're going to be his parents? No, he comes in the door. I said, this is your dad. I'm your mom. This is your brother or sister. And you're never going to leave here again. But he didn't believe me. And just like Natalia Grace, he said, hi, Mom. Hi, Matt, Dad. And I knew it was generic. I knew he didn't mean it. So there was this point, months of the child not being, quote, one of us. I remember looking at him now he was like the same age as my other son. So they were like 6 weeks apart, like twins. I remember looking in the bunk bed and looking at him and saying, have I made the worst mistake of my life? Why? Because I had, and my parents had said this, why are you adopting? You have a son and a daughter and everything's fine. Why would you adopt this child? You don't know what's wrong with him. And I'm thinking to myself, that's true. We had this perfect family. Happy mom, happy dad, happy son, happy daughter. Everything's great. And we bring in this kid and the kid's not adjusting. And God knows what's wrong with this kid. He might kill us in the night, I remember thinking that. So luckily for us, about 6 months period of time, he pissed me off one day and I yelled at him. And I was really rotten. And then I went up and apologized. I said, look, mommy was in a bad mood. Mommy's being terrible. And sorry about that, but I yell at everybody in the family. I mean, it's your turn today. And from that moment on, he started smiling. Why? Because he knew he was safe. He knew I wasn't going to throw him out because I was pissed off at him. He knew that he wasn't just going to be removed because I had a bad moment, because he didn't make me happy for that moment. I didn't just chuck him out of the house. After that, he felt safe. And then everything went well from that point on. So then, yes, there he is. We adopted him. And you can see my son David's face is better. Was that before or after he got that? No, that's after. So, yeah, so here they are. Things are better now. Yeah, everything's all good. Now we adopted him. Here we are as a family. That's all of us together. And here's my son David. Here he is grown up. And here's Jeremy grown up. So there he is with a cat. And there's my daughter grown up. So anyway, all my kids are grown up. So they're turning. Jeremy is my adopted son, is turning 40 in 6 weeks, and my son David just turned 40, so they're almost twins. And my daughter's the oldest of the three of them. Everything turned out well. Jeremy turned out to be a wonderful human being. Oh, and just recently he went to one of these things where you drink wine and make pictures. So he, it's green. I can't do this well. Oh my God, it's green. I have a green screen behind me, so it doesn't work. But there's actually, oh man, that sucks. There's actually green. Damn, I can't fix it because it's a green screen. Anyway, he painted this picture for me, and you can't see it now. Darn it all. But anyway, he painted this for me, and then he came and gave it to me for Mother's Day, and he said, I wanted my mom to have my first painting as have a painting from her child, the first painting her son has ever done. He was 39 years old, but hey, and it's so cute and so sweet. So he turned out well. But was it easy? No. Did I have doubt? Yes. Today, that adoption system never told me anything much about his past. They never told me what to expect. We never went through any training. We never had a clue what we were about to be hit with. We didn't know about attachment disorder. We knew nothing about this stuff. And I have friends who've done foster care with children who have tried to rape their kids. They have tried to kill their children in a crib. I know this happens. I've also adopted. I fostered a deaf child who was 12 years old when I got her. She actually 13 when I got her. She became pregnant at 12. She came to my house pregnant. 12-year-old. She was a 13-year-old deaf child. My experience with the foster system was dreadful. They were horrifying to me, and they were horrifying to her. Everything was a disaster. And then they took her away, and it was one of the saddest things I ever had happen. But my son, thank God, my son Jeremy is with me, and he's grown up, and he's fine, and we have a family. But there was nothing. No, I never got any help. I never got any understanding of what I was getting into. I never understood anything he might have been going through before he came to our house. Nobody told us anything. So I'm going to say for Natalia Grace, these people, we can say mean things about this family, which we don't even freaking have. I'm sorry, not that family. Where's our Natalia Grace family? There they are. Okay, let's take a look at this family. There they are. Mom, dad, their 3 kids, and their new Natalia Grace. Did anybody talk to them about anything before they had the child? They had the child there was no fostering period from what I can see. They adopted her like instantly. Did they have any way out? What kind of help did they have? Did they work within the system? It doesn't sound like it. It seemed like they finally went out to doctors and they took her to a mental institution. I think they were trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with her. But why didn't they have a whole supportive system to go into this? It's because a lot of times it doesn't exist. And so did they really think that this child was not a child? Did they really think that we are being screwed over? This child is an adult who's trying to kill our kids. I don't know. Now, mind you, since I've watched Natalia on Dr. Phil, I've watched her videos. And she supposedly, by the way, she went to stay with this family, the one she's on with Dr. Phil. Where is the one on Dr. Phil? Hold on a second. She went to stay with this family. They theoretically rescued her. This is the couple. They're a Christian couple, very, very religious. They took in a lot of foster children. She's on Dr. Phil with them. They've had her for years now. I think 7 years now or even more. They think she's fantastic. She's never hurt their children. She's wonderful with babies. This is her, one of her foster sisters. They're having fun together. They're getting ready for Halloween together in the next video. She talks like a teenager. Everything seems absolutely normal. I don't detect anything in Natalia that says to me she's an adult or she's psychopathic. I don't see it. Now, usually I do see things. I see things clearly, but I don't see it here. Now, is it because she's really good and we're only seeing these little clips that are perfect clips? Do we have very overly generous, naive, these foster parents now that will accept, just that's what they do. They always see the good side of things. But she's not killed anybody, it's clear. Or is the problem that when she was brought into the Barnett's house, she did have attachment disorder? Why wouldn't she? She'd been in a foster care system for years. Now, mind you, I don't think she's an adult because she didn't have an accent. I find that pretty interesting that usually when you're brought into when you come to a country and you come as an adult, it's hard to get rid of your accent. So my ex-husband, who is Jamaican, they had 6 kids. The first 3 have accents. The second 3 do not have accents. Why? Because they came here at different ages. If she came here as an adult, I think she'd have an accent. She has zero accent. But could she have come here at 8 years old and then got rid of her accent in a couple of years with the first family? Possible. Yes, that's young enough to get rid of it. So by the time she hooked up with the Barnetts, she didn't have an accent. Could she have had an attachment disorder and had weird behaviors? I find it hard to believe she did not have weird behaviors. I can't believe she was a perfect child. She comes across as so amazingly sweet and nice in every single way. I find that a little hard to believe that if she had been in a horrific orphanage situation and then she'd been dumped by the first family, she would have walked into the second family going, everything's perfect, and she never exhibited anything odd. So do I believe it's possible she had attachment disorder and therefore the family couldn't connect with her properly and got frustrated with her? Did she do some strange and creepy things? I think it's very possible. And I think it's possible she wasn't 6, but maybe 10. So when I look at the family, sorry, I'm trying to find the family. Let me get back to the family. Okay, I just got back to them. When I look at this family, do they have issues? That dude definitely histrionic personality disorder, unquestionably. Mom, I liked her book. I thought she was she has wonderful advice to give. Was she overwhelmed? Did she have a midlife crisis and her whole family fell apart after Natalia came because she thought she could handle it and couldn't? Maybe. I found it very strange because you think of anybody who could handle somebody like Natalia. She could, because she dealt with autism and she dealt with daycare kids all the time. So you would think she'd be better at it. But did she just bite off more than she could chew? Was Natalia so weird to her she freaked her out? I just don't know. And so this is one of these things when we look at this whole case, it's so out there. It's so out there. We have so little information about what is true and what is not true that I, even as a profiler, can't absolutely come down on one side or the other. Now we're going to have a new show that comes out this summer that's, about, Natalia's going to give her story. Well, I don't know. So I'm going to give you my profiling determination, and I'm going to go to all your comments. I know I've been talking a long time. It's such a screwed up case that it's hard to even put into the brain, all right. What do I think? Do I think Natalia is an adult when she came to stay with the Barnetts? No, I do not. I think that the state is 100% responsible for everything that happened from the time they claimed she was an adult. And I think nobody is at fault once that happened. And they ended up not getting prosecuted. He got prosecuted and found not guilty. She never got prosecuted for abandoning Natalia or not neglecting her by putting her in an apartment. Why? And I think that was correct. Why? Because the state was responsible for changing her age without proper documentation. That was the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen happen. The state they should take the fall. If anybody should be sued, Natalia should sue the state for doing that to her. All right. So first of all, I think the state is at fault. Secondly, that adoption agency should be shut down. No adoption agency should behave the way they behaved, giving no information, questionable information, all the garbage that they did. That thing should be shut down. All the agencies who act that way should be shut down. Okay. Again, we have the fault outside of the parents. They're looking to help children, give children a home, and they got these squirrely agencies involved in these things. That thing should be shut down and sued shitless. Okay, that's my opinion on that. So, first of all, the state is at fault. Then the adoption agency is at fault. What about the Ukraine? Well, Ukraine and Russia have been doing squirrely things with adoptions for a long time. They've sent a lot of kids over to the United States, come out of these agencies, and these children have been psychopathic. And they've left these parents with terrifying situations of children who are dangerous to be in their home, and they don't know what to do with them. So that, to me, again, is wrong. So if you're going to do these kind of things, you ought to have a huge support system to go with the parents. They should be monitored. There should be a social worker working with them, and there should be a 1-year time frame where they can find if the child can adjust, and they can adjust to find out if this will work. So again, I think that should be the requirement. before you can have that child in your home. So those are those things. Now we go, okay, so let's say that's all over. Now we got the Barnetts. I think they went into this with a good heart. I really honestly do. They're a little wacky in the long run, but I think they had 3 kids. They'd done well with the 3 boys. They'd helped their autistic child do extraordinarily well. They thought, hey, we can help another kid. We can help a girl. Hey, here's a child who needs a home. I think they went into it okay. I don't know what happened when Natalia got in their home, whether whether attachment disorder so threw them for a loop that, combined with the fact that they thought the age thing was off, that then they became so distrustful and so freaked out they couldn't function. I don't know. I don't know if they saw those movies, Orphan, The Bad Seed. I don't know if that affected the way they thought that, hey, this kid is not a child. Once, if implanted in their head that this child was not a child, they may have lost their whole ability to view anything properly. They may have thought, look, we've been screwed over. This person is not a kid. This person is, we're terrified to have this kid around our children. We're going to put her in an apartment. We're going to make sure she's got a place to stay, but we don't want her in the house. In my opinion, the whole social service system should have been involved in this process, but they weren't. I don't know why they weren't. Why not? Where were they? I don't understand it. But again, we're talking about an HBO documentary, which was garbage. So I don't know whether they were involved and we're not hearing about it. I don't know whether they were so pitiful. There was no way that this family's like, we don't know what to do with this kid and we have no help. And so we're going to just desperately do what we have to do. I don't know. Do I think he's got issues, histrionic personality disorder? You betcha. I'm not sure about Mom now. I loved her book. I think she did great things in her book, but then I've seen some creepy things in the documentary which make me say, does she have some issues? Maybe she does too. Maybe if they never adopted Natalia, their kids would have just managed to grow up okay. They might have still end up divorced, but maybe the kids would have been okay. But they brought Natalia in and everything went to hell. Was it because of Natalia or was it because of the system? Was it because she did have attachment disorder and a weird age issue that threw everything out of whack so that they became terribly frightened? Did Natalia do stuff? We still don't know. Natalia comes across to me as a really nice person. She does. I mean, I'm looking at her videos and I really like her. I do. She seems sweet and kind and like really accepting of her situation with dwarfism. And she's like, hey, so it is. And she seems really cool. The family that she's with now seems to adore her. She seems to adore them. But I'm seeing a little clip. Is she? Maybe I'm not seeing things correctly. Sometimes a psychopath can be very good in small clips. Maybe she did exactly what this family said she did. Maybe she scared the living crap out of them. Maybe she appeared to be extremely dangerous at that time. Maybe she was angry because she'd already been dumped twice and now she's with this family and maybe she couldn't handle it and she did some things that were very odd and scary. There's so many things that we don't have proper details on. It's hard to say what the truth is and what the truth isn't. But if I'm going to put blame anywhere, I'm blaming whoever in our legal system had the audacity to change her age without any absolute proof. I have nothing but blame for that crappy adoption agency who I think probably manipulated and lied to move her into families. So when he comes, and I have a problem with whatever happened in Ukraine, I don't know. So I'm going to give a break to the first family that adopted Natalia Grace. I'm going to give a break to the Barnetts because I don't know what they dealt with and why they ended up doing what they did. I will give no break to HBO, which is garbage, which is a whack channel, just like Christine Barnett said, regardless of what you think of Christine Barnett, she's right about that. So what we have is a lot of people behaving inappropriately because why? Is it because people are being screwed over right and left because the system sucks? In my opinion, yes. I mean, I got lucky with my son. I did. If anybody asked me, would I do it again? If I knowing what I know now, would I have put in for adoption for my son? My answer would have been no. I wouldn't have done it. Not because my son isn't a great guy, but because I didn't know at that time whether I would get lucky or not. Now, knowing what I know, I could have adopted a child who would have destroyed our entire lives. Not because it's the child's fault, but because it's the system's fault. I could have taken my family and ended up in this situation because I wanted to open up my home to another child who I knew nothing about, who the system didn't tell me about. And it turns out the kid's a scary psychopath. Lucky for me, that's not what happened to me. So I've got 3 wonderful children. I lucked out. And I look back and I'm like, I'm so thankful I adopted my son, Jeremy. I can't imagine life without my son, Jeremy. He's wonderful. As are my other 2 kids. I have 3 wonderful children. But knowing what I know now, would I take that chance again? The answer is no. And I've also dealt with the foster care system. As I said, I would never deal with the foster care system again either. Don't trust them either. And it hurts me because I want kids to have good foster homes. I want children to have a home. I want them to be adopted when they don't have another home. I want all this for these kids. But if the system won't support properly, won't tell the truth, stabs the adoptive parents and foster parents in the back, and the children in the back, then what? What do we have? So I feel bad for everybody in this whole story. I do feel bad for Natalia for what she had to go through, assuming she's not a psychopath. But even if she is a psychopath, I'm going to say probably because of what happened to her back in Ukraine. I do feel sorry for the Barnetts. I think they did open up their home to a child, and for whatever reasons, they had an experience that was for them life-changing and disastrous. I feel sorry for their other children who lost their sister in the process and who've gone through this now that's horrific HBO garbage documentary. And you don't have to participate. Adoptive mom didn't. Christine didn't participate. Michael, who does love the camera, apparently, he wants attention. So yes, he participated. But when the media comes calling, people fall for it. And all I can say is, Natalia, I don't know what you're going to be doing with this stupid investigation discovery documentary. God help you. If you're not psychopathic, I hope you do well with it and you don't get stabbed in the back by them. If you are psychopathic, I guess you'll just use them and they'll use you. But sad all the way around. Okay, I'm going to go to your comments. I've lost my mind on this one. Lost my mind on this one. Oh, Lord. Okay, I'm going to go to your comments. Sorry. And Rad, yes, as I say, I think Rad Sarah is very, very likely. You cannot take a child away from the mother. Natalia's mother, supposedly, according to the story, Natalia's mother supposedly told her, "Oh, don't waste your time with her. She's just, she's going to be not a kid you want to raise." And they pulled the child from her. Therefore, the child lost the mother right away. And I don't know what kind of lousy situation that Natalia got as a baby. A lot of the Russia and Ukraine stories are that they're left in cribs and nobody's even holding them and they're just given food, with bottles, and they're just ignored. That's going to be attachment disorder in a heartbeat. Because a baby wants mom. A baby wants to be cuddled. A baby wants to nurse. A baby wants that love. And the baby doesn't get it and is abandoned. It's horrific. It's horrific. That's, yeah. So yes. And once that happens, the question is, what happens after that? Does a child recover from attachment disorder? Or does a child then become, let me read you a little bit, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, attachment disorder. I just want to read this one thing about attachment disorder. Children suffering from this developmental disorder of attachment development are challenged with everyday life, often resorting to negative behaviors like manipulation, isolation, aggression, hyperactivity, lying, stealing, harming self and others. Others may experience PTSD, flashbacks, night terrors, and in each case, the child suffers and causes great distress for caregivers and peers. The RAD, or diagnosis, may be accompanied by other conditions as well. Yeah. So yes, a child comes into the adoptive parent's home, the foster home, and they exhibit these bizarre behaviors. Now, in some foster situations, the foster parents are easier to accept those things because they're not their children and they're not going to be their children. They're temporary. And when kids are temporary, you can let things go. But when a person brings a child into their home as a permanent adoptive situation, it becomes their child that they're going to live with forever and ever and ever, then things are different. So when that child starts becoming aggressive, says things that are concerning, is scary, all kinds of bizarre behaviors, then the parents become frightened because they've got other children in the home, pets in the home, whatever they got, and a lifetime with this child. Now, mind you, one of the things I recommend to people very strongly now is never adopt a child that is older than your youngest child, because your child can't protect themselves. And I've seen the situation where somebody will bring in an adopted child at 5 years old who will kill their younger children. Because a child is a psychopath, because a child has suffered from extreme situations with foster care, neglect, abandonment, and they have this disorder. So at least keep the kids small enough so they can't kill your other kids, theoretically. In this case, they did adopt a smaller child, at least to some extent. So that was useful. And one of the things that Natalia says and other people say is, how could she have hurt anybody? She's tiny, it's hard to, she supposedly pushed her adoptive mom into a fence, electric fence, or tried to. And they're like, how could she have done that? She's so little. Well, first of all, I'm going to say some little small kids are strong as heck, and they can indeed push you into something. I've worked in hospital situations where I've been attacked by little children, and they can do some damage. So that's not true. And if the little kid gets hold of a knife, yes, they can stab you to death in the night. Now, theoretically, the one advantage they had with a child with dwarfism is that they can put the knives up really high. They can hide the knives. But can you hide everything? Can you hide every heavy object in your house that they can hit another child over the head with when they're sleeping? They said she threw toys into the street so the children would run after them. Clever. That would be really smart. I don't even know how they would make that stuff up, because that's kind of an unusual thing to even figure out, even imagine. Did she actually do that? Maybe. But was the reason she did that because she wanted the children to run into the street and get killed? Or was she angry at the child and threw the toy away from them? I don't know. See, I don't know how much the adoptive parents exaggerated what happened or imagined that they understood the motive behind what happened. I don't know. I really honestly do not know. Rose says, I can understand being overwhelmed caring for multiple children with difficulties. Yes. She apparently, I think mom thought she could definitely do it. She had dealt with so much in her life. She had the autistic child who became a genius. She got another child who had some issues. The other child, she said, had no issues as far as physical or any other problems. She had some serious health issues. And she had daycare kids. She took, I think, way too much into her life, my opinion. Of course, she's writing a book, and her book comes across as really like she handled everything really well. She seems very open in the book and fairly honest about things. I really did like her, which is I didn't expect. When I read the book, I'm like, I would recommend this book to other people. I liked her. I thought she was very open, very humble in certain ways, and very. I didn't catch any of the things about her that I would say normally. I would go, you creep the heck out of me. I got that in other books. I read Amanda Knox's book. That creeped me out. I read Kate McCann's book. That creeped me out. Hers did not creep me out. I don't know whether she just got to a point where she took on too much. The child scared her. She couldn't get proper help. She lost it. I don't know. And I say this character, maybe he's a fun guy to be around when things aren't going badly and when HBO isn't filming him so that he can be drama queen. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot to figure out here. Midgie says, after they had to re-age, I don't imagine giving her back to social services would have been a possibility. See, this Midgie and Rose, this drives me crazy. Where was social services? I mean, I don't understand. I understand you've adopted the kid, but is there no process, any place where you can go and say, can you not get, I mean, I know you're not supposed to get rid of your adopted kid any more than you're supposed to get rid of your biologically born kid, but is there no process, or did they actually go through all the processes that HBO doesn't care about sharing with us, mind you? They went through everything they could to try to find a legal method to find another home for her, to put her in a group home, to put her in foster care, to put her to, maybe they tried their little, I don't know. I can't figure it out because nobody's telling the truth here. Did they do all that and then give up and say, okay, from what we're seeing, they're saying that she's older than she is and they got her re-age and we're just going to get her out of the house. That's the safest thing we can do for the family. I don't know. I'm not saying they're right. I just don't know. I don't know what they did to try to work their way not to do that. Because so far I've seen that the whole system sucks. So since the system sucks so badly in so many other ways, maybe they just did nothing for them to help them. Because I say she was really good about working with social services and all kinds of other people with her autistic son. I mean, it's not like she'd never dealt with these people before. As I said, they weren't like hiding away on some, up on a mountain somewhere. She actually seemed like she sometimes disagreed with them and decided to take a different road, but it wasn't like she was anti-working with people. So it's crazy. Here's a Tikkun as an idea. She wanted to control the family, a queen child close to psychopathy. I don't know if you're talking about the mom or I don't know if you're talking about the mom or you're talking about Natalia. I would say with Christine, does she control things? Yes, I would say he definitely. I say it was. He wants attention and he likes to. Oh my God! But he's a follower. He's not a leader. She's a leader, and she's very forceful and trying to get things accomplished. And the reason I can relate to that is I had a very similar situation in my marriage. I chose to homeschool my kids just like she did. I made the decision. My husband didn't. Did I have more control in the family? Yeah. It's just I'm a go-getter. I research things. I get things done. My husband was more of a laid-back sort of, well, whatever you think is right guy. But luckily, my ex-husband wasn't a complete drama queen either. Woof, woof. I mean, that's something about the agency process. Oh, you're talking about Lauren saying, Lauren, I don't know that it was illegal, but it was creepy. And it shady, I think would be a good word for it. Shady. A lot of these adoption agencies coming out of Russia and Ukraine have been really shady, and other countries as well. There's this interesting problem in America. There are couples who would like to have a child, and they can't get them through the American agency, especially babies, because they're not available. Okay. And so what they do is they go overseas and essentially buy a baby. And there's always a question of, in some cases, whether poor women are being pushed to sell their babies to American couples. That's been a question. As far as the adoption agencies goes, there are adoption agencies in other countries where they are trying to get those kids out of there. I say get rid of, but get those kids out of there, and they're willing to sell to the higher bidders, and the higher bidders are from the United States. It's not necessarily a bad thing that these parents in the United States are willing to adopt an older child. That's lovely, but the agency is also not necessarily going to tell them the truth about that child. There have been some sad situations I talked about recently. There was an Indian, a child from India who was adopted into America, and she ended up getting murdered by, I think, the adoptive father. And now India is saying, oh, we don't want to adopt any children to America anymore, which is kind of silly again, because a child needs a home. A child needs a home. It doesn't matter what country they're in. And then there's this really nonsensical stuff where if the child, like for example, the child is in an agency in India, and the birth parents were Hindu, that somehow the child's not is supposed to be given to a Hindu family. It's a baby. It's a baby. The baby doesn't have a religion. It's stupid. I don't care if the baby was born to Christians or Hindus or Muslims or agnostics or atheists. I don't care what they're born to. They're a baby. Then whatever family they end up with, it's meaningless, quite frankly. And I think that's just nonsense. Or culturally, well, the child's Indian. No, it's a baby. It's not an Indian. It's a baby. The baby comes to America, it'll be an American. It doesn't matter what the color of his skin was, or it was born in, genetically to a couple that was Indian, lived in India and had genetics there. It's a baby, and if it's a baby that needs a home, it's a baby that needs its home, So to me, that a lot of stuff is nonsense. However, the safety of the child, the safety of the family the child is going to, those two things are extremely important, because you want successful adoption. You don't want the child being abused when it gets where it's going, and you don't want the family to be abused by the child. So in order to have a successful adoption, you want everything to be above board and healthy and open and honest, so that it's a good match. Now, in my son's case, it turned out to be a good match. Thank God for my son, because it's a lot of it's just a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot when people have children too. I mean, children are born into crappy families, and children are adopted into crappy families. I mean, it's a crapshoot no matter what you look at. But you can't stop biological parents from having babies, but you can stop bad adoptions. So I just think at that point, Miranda says there are many babies who need a home, but many don't because they aren't blonde hair and blue eyes. But yes and no. A lot of times there are parents of any skin color who would adopt a child of any skin color, and they're being prevented because they're not the same skin color. That's what happened to my husband and myself. They wouldn't let us adopt a white child or a black child. We could only adopt a mixed race child, because the child had to look like us. It was so stupid. It was because one of the funny things, one of the reasons it never bothered me what color the child would be, is that I had once, when my children were young, two of my children were young, I hadn't, my adopted son, Jeremy, hadn't gotten my family yet. We were going to a Quaker meeting house, and in the Quaker meeting house was a couple, a white couple, and they had lived in Tanzania, and they had adopted two sons in Tanzania, and then they had a biological child. So they had three kids, two African black children, and one white kid. And the white kid was, well, whatever. And the one Tanzanian, the second one was whatever. But the funniest part was the oldest Tanzanian kid ended up doing a lot of work with his father. And the two of them would go out, they would fix stuff. And you'd always see them together. And they both had beards. And one was very white with a beard, and one was very black with a beard, because they say it's from Tanzania originally. And when you saw the two of them together, you never questioned that they were father and son. Never. I mean, it was all, you just looked at them and they were father and son. And because of their behaviors, they were so connected. They were father and son. And you forgot after a while that one of them was very white and one of them was very black. I mean, you just forgot, because it didn't matter. It made no difference whatsoever. So the same thing happened for us when we were adopting. We're like, we don't care what the kid looks like. Skin color is meaningless to us. And so, as it turned out, my son Jeremy was a much darker skin color than me. And some people had actually asked me, they said, well, is this your husband's child from somebody else? I'm like, no, it isn't. And they're like, oh, they assume that. I'm like, no, he's our child adopted. And then after a while, when people saw me with my son, nobody ever questioned it after a while. It seemed normal to them, because it didn't make any difference, So, yeah. Rose says, I agree they weren't prepared for her issues. I think it is feeling deceived about her age amplified the situation. I think that is very true. If they thought she was older, then I could see them making it worse. Yeah, I think if she had attachment disorder, and I can't prove that she did not. Now, she may have adjusted, mind you, Natalia may have had severe attachment disorder early on and adjusted and done well with it later on. Okay. I believe my son had attachment disorder as well, but I think he dealt well with it later. So now he's a successful man. He's got his own home. He's got his work. He's got a great job. He's a great citizen. He's a wonderful son, great brother to his brother and sister, and a great son to his father and me. He has managed to overcome what he dealt with. So Natalia may now be a very happy child. She may be a happy teenager who's got she's got this nice family who's taken her in. Maybe she feels she belongs. Maybe she has overcome what she's been through. But maybe when the Barnetts got her, it wasn't so much. She had just come from another family who dumped her. Mind you, just came from there. She didn't know where she belonged in the world. Now she's with these people. And who knows what she was like when she first came to them. Just because she said mommy, daddy, that's all generic crap. I knew that when my son said the same to me. I'm like, hi, you're my mom. And I'm like, your mom? I'm like, yeah, you don't really mean that. Because I wasn't really his mom. I was just the title of mom. It took a while before. Now when he says mom, I know he means mom. And dad, that is his dad and I am his mom. But then no. So she may have come in, Natalia may have come in with severe attachment disorder when they got her. And so what they say may be true. And that age issue may have made them think they did not know what they thought something was really off in this whole situation. And the thing is, when you bring a child into your home and you have other children, and this is where the problem comes down to, your protection is going to be for the other children before the new child. That's the reality. You've got to protect the ones you've raised for those years. Not that they're your own, but that you've raised, and and then this new kid comes in, you're going to be much more likely to push that new kid away and protect the other ones. So that they became scared for their own children is possible. I can't really tell because I don't know who's telling the truth here. If you watch the show, everybody's so wacky that you're like, I think you're lying about this, and I think you're lying about that. I have not a clue. Oof. The family that took her in permanently, they're the couple that was on, I suppose she's been there like 7 years. They took in a number of foster kids and her. They seem like really nice people. She seems very happy there. I don't know though. We're seeing a clip here and a clip there. I don't know what she's really like. I mean, she comes across in her videos as I really like her, but it's a video. I mean, anybody can manage a 5-minute video and come across really great. Doesn't mean they're that way the rest of the day. This family that took her in, they say they're a Christian couple. They've had foster kids before. They're very open people. Maybe they are very much more accepting of emotional issues. Maybe that was a good thing because then they could let her grow up and not have them be so paranoid and not have them be so concerned. Maybe they're much more easygoing about that. Or maybe they're such great people that they're just a super family for her to get into, and then she could get over attachment disorder. It's hard to know. It really is hard to know. Well, there's an interesting off topic. Would you ever do a vacay for your sub since you like to travel? Like a getaway to see sites and listen to you talk about profiling, not just a cruise. Too much crime on them. Like Crime Con on a cruise. I actually used to do a show. I actually did do a thing called Older Women Cheap Travel. I took women, and Annie Haley, she's probably not here right now, but Annie Haley went with me to Mongolia and China. I took women to Mexico, to Nicaragua, to Cuba, to India, and to Mongolia and China. I did do cultural trips because I like to travel. Have I considered doing it recently? No, only because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and the plane flights suck nowadays. It really does. They do not have a wiki page. Nobody has a wiki page on her. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see what else you have to say. Oh, this is interesting. Yes, Lauren. I saw this with Native American families in the news too, that they will be adopted by other Native American families given preference. All right. Um, there's a difference between given preference and having children being taken away. There was an issue over, in this particular case, a family had adopted, I believe, a Native American child. They were a white family, adopted a Native American child. They had that child, and then the sibling came up for adoption, and they were going to adopt the sibling so the kids could be together, and it was fought that that child was Native American, shouldn't go to the white family. I'm like, it's their sibling, you know, they should have a family. That just seems silly to me. Now, culturally, a baby doesn't have a culture, but a baby does grow up in a culture. In certain instances, because culture can be very strong, um, I get the point that if a child, for example, is Native American, and the sense that their bio parents were within a particular Native American tribe, if there's somebody in that tribe who wants to adopt them, then they can grow up with that tribe and within that culture, and that's cool. I think that's fine. If that doesn't exist, I think they should go where they should go. But I've heard things like, for example, a child will be, this kind of drives me crazy. A child will be, let's say, born in India. They live there for one freaking day. They're brought to America. They're raised in America. And then the parents go, well, we want to make sure that they understand their Indian culture. They don't have an Indian culture. They're not Indians. They're Americans. They're Indian for a day. They're not Indians. They're Americans. Telling your kid that there are some other culture that they're not is ridiculous. And I say this as a person who absolutely loves the Indian culture, and I've been over to India 5 times. I would move to India. I love India. But if the kid was brought here as a baby, they're not Indian. They're American. Just because they happen to have a slightly tanner skin than maybe the person that adopted them. Or maybe not. Maybe they have a lighter skin because the person adopted them is African American. Maybe they have a lighter skin. But just because they look like somebody from, genetically, somebody from South India or somebody from East India or somebody from North India or the Punjabi or whatever, they look like people from that area. That doesn't make them that. That's just genetics. That's genetics. That's not culture. And if you've been raised an American, you're an American. Now, if you want to find out about India, that's cool, And of course, you'll have fun when you go there. They'll assume that, hey, you might. Let's say you genetically look like from somebody from Punjab. You go to Punjab, everybody thinks you're Punjabi. Then they wonder why the heck you can't speak the language. But you can always introduce to a child the wonders of the world and the wonders of all kinds of places and different cultures and all that. But my God, to say that you can't adopt a child because they don't look exactly like you or because they were born someplace else for one day is stupid, in my opinion. Now, does it make it easier because of the way the world is? So let's say a child is born in China, has Chinese looks. Let's say she's born in Beijing, and you bring her from Beijing. She's raised in America as your child. And when your child grows older, your child says, why do I look like people from Beijing? And you go, well, that's true because that's where you're born. Sometimes do they want to go back and find that things out? Yeah, people are oddly curious, so they got to do these kind of things. That's human nature. But she's still an American. She just happens to have a genetic of somebody over there. And does she have biological parents over there? Yes, that's true too. So the question some people would have is, would it have been easier if she was born to a biological Chinese family, for example, from Beijing? Would it have been easier if she was adopted by a family that was also biologically looking the same? I guess. It makes it easier in the fact that you all look alike, as many questions supposedly, but still, yeah, you could say it's easier, but then it doesn't mean that it is. That family could be as American as all get out and say, we don't want to have anything damn do with China. Yeah. So my grandfather came from China. I'm not Chinese. I'm American. So what the heck you want to go to China for? Well, because I'm biologically Chinese. Well, so are we, but we aren't in China. So, it's just a whole big fat mess a lot of times. Oh my God, it just is. Let's see what you have to say. I've never heard of reaging as a procedure. I have not heard of this either. This is bizarre, but I think the problem is there's a lack of trust in the Ukrainian and Russian adoption system, that they've been lied to. I don't know if it's true for other countries as well, but I feel like I've been lied to by the American adoption system. So I wouldn't be surprised that other countries will forge documents. So now the document is supposed to say 2003. They'll throw a document up there and say that's what it says. They'll get the mother to say, oh yeah, she was born in 2003. Does that mean it's true? I don't know. Could be true. Could be they're lying, because nobody wants to admit whatever they did. So I don't know. But do I believe an adoption agency will lie, will down age the kid to get the kid out of there? I absolutely believe they would do that. That the American system aged the kid up from 8 years old at the time, I think, to 22 is outrageous. That's absolutely outrageous. She should sue the living crap out of the American justice, whoever the heck did that. I have no clue how they got away with that crap. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Rose, I'm confused how the first family could get rid of her, but the Barnetts couldn't. I mean, other than leaving her in an apartment. I don't know. That boggles my mind too. But I mean, yeah, why not? If one person can get a kid readopted, why can't they get the kid readopted? Would nobody take the kid? At that point, was there another reason they couldn't? See, this is where, that's why I'm with the Christine Barnett on this. This thing is whack, because these are major questions that should be answered in the show. They should have gone to the adoption agency and gotten information. They didn't do it. They should have found out how the heck she got re-aged. Who in the system allowed this to happen? They should have found out ask the Barnetts, why couldn't she be adopted out? Why did you have to re-age her instead of getting her readopted? Not that that's great either, but still, could you have not done that? Could you have not put her in the foster care system? I mean, kids get taken away from parents all the time and put in the foster care system. Why wasn't she put in a foster care system? I don't know. It drives me crazy, because I honestly don't have any of that information. It's just annoying as all get out. Lauren says, I think it was that they also said they saw her drawing pictures of herself killing them or something. They said, again, one would think if you're going to have to put a child out of your house, that there will be a long process and a lot of paperwork detailing that the child had psychopathic behavior. They said they put her in a mental institution. The mental institution said she is psychopathic. They were supposedly told that, but I didn't see any paperwork. Who are these people? And let me tell you something. Generally speaking, therapists, psychiatrists do not like to label children psychopathic. They do not. They'll come up with every other version that they can come up with. They'll say, oh yeah, they've got rad. They will say they have ADHD. They will say they have Asperger's. They will say anything before they will say this child is psychopathic. That's the last thing in the world they want to label a child. Who did that? How many people did that? On what basis did they do that? So this is what this useless piece of garbage show doesn't even get into. They waste 6 hours of our time. Was it 6 hours? I don't know, it was torture. Of watching Michael Barnett slam his finger, beat his hands into the floor and make claims. Oh, he claimed that Christine beat the living hell out of her. And he says that he beat the living hell out of her, and he's like smashing her. If that's true, why wasn't this child in a hospital following that? Could Christine do what he said she did, smash her that many times, and she's not in the hospital with a broken jaw, black eyes? What kind of crap is that? This guy is full of crap. I mean, he is. He's Massive drama queen. Oh my God. Oh my, just appalling. But so none of these things are substantiated. So we have a claim that's not substantiated, another claim that's not substantiated, another claim that's not substantiated. Drives me insane. So that's why it's very hard for me to properly analyze anything in this case, because it's not being properly, and nothing substantiated. We have a whole bunch of claims after claim after claim after claim, and we have clips and clips and clips and clips. So I don't know anything to enough of an extent to say this child is not a child, or this child is a psychopath, or this child is perfectly great, or Christine is a horrible human being, or Christine is a nice person, or he did come off as a drama queen, but that's because, Michael, you kind of put yourself in every single one of these. You let them film the living hell out of you. So, but it's almost like this whole story is what's wrong with the media. This whole story is what's wrong with what we have going on in television, the television world, that the desire for a producer, director, the people participating to be in something of worth is flown out the window, and all it matters is how many views do you get and how exciting is it, and it's quite appalling. Did she really receive a monthly check from the state? Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. I can't remember. Well, okay. Midgie says, what reputable adoption agency says to the prospective adoptive parents, we have a child you can adopt, but you must make a decision within 24 hours? No reputable agency would do that. But do we know that's true? That's what he said. I don't know if this guy has a clue what the difference between a truth and a lie is. But again, where's the information about the stupid adoption agency? Who went to talk to them? The adoption agency refused to talk to them. Is there no paperwork? What the heck? Yeah, who would call up and say you got 24 hours to make a decision? Or give the kid to somebody else. That child was up for the adoption with supposedly now they don't have this in the show, and it drives me absolutely nutty. So we have that family, the one that also had dwarfism. Where are they? Where's our dwarfism family? Here they are. This family, they claimed that in the show that they would done all the paperwork to get her. Look at this. Doesn't this look like the perfect family? For God's sakes, the perfect family. Why didn't they get her? Was it the $25,000 I heard about someplace else? But why isn't that in the show? Why isn't there a clear, if this is a quote documentary and not a 6 hours of reality television, if this is a quote documentary, why do we not hear? Here is what happened with the first family. We went and talked to them. We got all the details from this family. Then they decided they couldn't handle her. So they went through this process. Here's the process that was gone through. This is the agency they dealt with. These are the prospective families. The family with dwarfism, the family without dwarfism, the Barnett family. What happened with these three families? How did this child end up with the Barnetts? Why do we not know any of that in a supposed documentary? Because it's not really a documentary. That's why. Good Lord. Let's see. Conduct disorder. That's another name. Yes. Let's see, Rose. It was very painful to have kids ask who my quote real parents are when they are right here. I just didn't look like my mom, so I preferred my dad take me to school to stop the questions. Sad truth. Yeah, I mean, we let me tell you what happened in our family. We managed to deal with certain things pretty well. So anyway, so my son Jeremy, he goes to this church school, right? And the church school was being very careful about who they let out the door. So if the child was in the classroom at the end of the day, they would look out the little glass window and they'd say, make sure that their mother was coming before they let the kid out. So at the end of the day, Jeremy is in there and I'm walking up to the door and he looks out and he goes, okay, my mom's out there. And the woman looks out and she goes, no, she's not. And my son looks out and goes, yes, she is. And the woman looks out and goes, no, she's not. And I finally get to the door and I go, yeah, that's my kid. And the woman goes, oh, oops. So our joke was at the dinner table, there she is. No, she's not. There she is. No, she's not. We just try. We tried to make fun of it because we understand that since my son Jeremy is not biracial, he's black. When I walk up, people do not think immediately that I'm his mom unless they know us and then they know I'm his mom. But yeah, we did run into that as children, and there were there's all of these kind of things when you're talking about mixed, in a place where people aren't used to it. Now, mind you, in a place where people start getting very used to it, then people stop asking those questions. It's just where it's new. So, if you're in the park and you've got your not white kids with you and strolling, and then somebody goes, "Oh, you're watching the kids," and you go, "Damn it, 24 hours a day, man." I remember I had a Korean friend, and he was like mowing the lawn. This was back in the 70s. He was mowing the lawn outside this really fancy house because he was rich, right? And he was mowing the lawn. Some guy came up and said, "Excuse me, can you tell me how much you charge to mow the lawn?" He goes, "Oh, I don't charge. I just sleep with the lady of the house." But that's the way things are. I mean, I always say have a bit of help your kids to have a sense of humor about where people become confused, because they're not necessarily confused in a mean way. Their reality is they haven't seen this, so therefore they don't recognize it, right? So, and I got married in 1979 to a black man, so it was newer back then than it is today. But even today, sometimes people do get confused, so that does happen. But yeah. So that's why some agencies want you to match your kids physically so that you can not have people question. But and again, I'm like, okay, fine. If you've got a whole bunch of people lined up who skin color matches, have at it. If you have a kid who is Korean, not a Korean, a kid who was born in Korea, who's 1 month old, and you got a family that was born in Korea who wants to adopt that child, bully for you. But if you got an American who wasn't born in Korea who wants to adopt that child who was born in Korea, fine. I mean, the child needs a family more than they need to match, So as you can see, I'm very, very strongly opinionated on that. This is not anything to do with criminal profiling. It's just, this is personal. Oh, yeah, movie Orphan was terrifying. I don't like horror movies, but it was a really well done, creepy horror movie. It really, really was. And there was sign language in it too. That was interesting. Because one of the kid in there is deaf. The bio kid is deaf. And then when they bring in the orphan, then now she starts learning how to sign to the deaf kid. And she's like really smart, and because she's like in her 30s, she learns things really quick. But the funniest part of that whole movie was where, as an orphan, as when she first comes to the family, the mother is a pianist, and so she's showing her how to play the piano, and she's like da 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 da, and then a few weeks later, the mother hears Tchaikovsky being played in the room, and she walks in, and the girls. And she's like, "Oh, how do you play Tchaikovsky?" Well, yeah. So it was pretty cool. Hey, Joe, whenever Pat says a documentary series is bad, I immediately want to watch it just to see how bad it really is. Yeah. Well, have at it. That's all I can say. Have at it. let's see. Well, no. Making a murderer is different. All right. Let me explain, Lex, what I think about making a murderer and how that's different from this piece of crap. This piece of crap is simply junk. Okay. It's a badly done reality show which has no respect for the truth. This careless and nonsensical. Making a Murderer was clearly defense driven. They wanted the truth to be erased in order to support the documentary being pro defense and saying that Stephen Avery was not guilty. This is just trash crap. That was unethical as a living get out. Absolutely 100% unethical. Making a Murder is one of the most unethical things I've ever seen made. And because Stephen Avery, of anybody, is guilty as all get out. And there are some Innocence Projects things where I can see why people lean this way or lean that way. I did the recent show on Luke Mitchell, who was in prison for murder in the UK and in Scotland as a teenager, who was found guilty of murdering his younger girlfriend. There are many people who are they did the documentary on that show, and a lot of people believe the documentary. Now the documentary again is highly defense driven, but at least I will say this. I can see where people might think Luke Mitchell was railroaded. I don't think he was. I just see why they could think that. But Stephen Avery, no way. And I can't believe that the people who made that documentary thought he was innocent. So kind of like they got less excuse than a defense attorney. A defense attorney says it's my job to get him off even if he's guilty. But the media has no excuse for presenting lies when they know they're lies. So, let's see, which one was this? I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Sorry. So Orphan is a scary movie. The Bad Seed is, I think, incorrect on the biological crap in it. But it's an interesting movie to watch, The Bad Seed, because what you see as a parent going through this horrifying realization that her daughter is a murderous psychopath. What do you do? And she's like torn between knowing that her daughter is an awful human being and the fact that she's always loved her daughter and she doesn't know how to let go of that. And so The Bad Seed is really an interesting psychological thing. The problem, I think, with Orphan, first of all, the husband is a ridiculous character in that movie, and then they brought in a whole bunch of stuff that was unnecessary. I don't think it was a perfect movie. They had a lot of issues, but what she was doing with the kids was kind of fascinating. So, yeah, not one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. Let me see what else you have to say here before I wrap it up for tonight. Does the Max documentary seem to sway a certain way about Natalia's age? Here's what they do. The first two, let's see, how does that work? The first two shows, you're like, oh my God, she's a psychopathic killer. We're in this corner. Then the next shows, they lean more the other side and make you, by the end of it, they point out the birth certificate. And so the conclusion in the way they're saying it is, oh no, she really was a child, but they got off. That's kind of the way they present it. How accurate any of that is. As far as, I don't know what they actually were trying to do, but I'm sure they were simply trying. Well, actually, I do know what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it a 6-part series that you would sit through because you wanted to know more what happened. It's, it was their way of producing a show. Some people say, well, it could have been done in 3. Three was enough. They didn't have to keep going. And it's true. They had a lot of garbage in here that was unnecessary. Had they They could have, in my opinion, they could have done it in 2 hours, and that would be quite enough. And then I would, but if they were going to do it longer, what I would like to see is actual investigative journalism. That would have been really unique. The two girls who produced them, MAM. What was it? What is MAM? Sorry, I don't know what MAM is. I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know what that is. No seduction scenes. Oh, good Lord. Oh, that was there was this whole thing with Christine and showing pictures that she had sent via text, which were sexual. Let me put it this way: they had no bar to which they couldn't go lower than. They had a point where Jacob, the genius son, he'd done his speech and he went upstairs and didn't realize his mic was still on. And he's like, "Oh, I didn't realize my mic was still on." But of course, they went right ahead and put on screen what he said when he thought his mic was off. That's unethical. I'm sorry. Yes, I mean, I get it. If you're like trying to take down a politician, I get that you'll do that. This was not a politician. This was a family member. This was a normal human being, and you went and humiliated him in this show. I don't know why any of these people trust going on these shows, because they're not trustworthy. Now, Christine didn't go on this show, probably because she knew they were not trustworthy, but they still managed to trash the living hell out of her with the sexual stuff, the texts. Did she send the text? I can't even comment because it looks like she did. It looks like she did lots of inappropriate stuff. There's things that are claimed, like she tried to set up Natalia with an adult sexually. I just don't have enough information that I can prove that's true. So I don't know whether they're twisting things. I don't know if they're editing things. I don't know, because that's why I do very few of these things anymore, because I have been libeled. I have been edited. I've had things twisted. I've had an answer of mine. I gave an answer to a question, but the question was removed later and a different question was replaced and put in place of it, so that I was actually not answering the question you think I was answering. This is the kind of stuff they do. So I don't trust them. So you have to take a lot of these things a little bit with, MAM, making a murderer. I didn't think about that being the acronym for that one, making a murderer. Yeah. The two girls who produced Making a Murderer, oh yeah, they should, but they don't care. They made a fortune. You know how much money was made? That was one of the highest grossing documentaries ever made. So, yeah, they're releasing more episodes. Well, supposedly this summer, which I guess is, I think in July, we're going to hear from Natalia herself. She's going to do a whole thing to tell her side of the story, the old side of the story thing. But again, I don't know why is it being presented? How is it being presented? How is it being edited? What's the agenda behind it? I don't know. It's really hard to know if you don't do thorough interviews. Like if I could work on this case and sit down with Natalia and I actually do real interviews with her, real interviews with the parents, real interviews with everyone, I would maybe understand where the lies are, where the manipulations are. I just don't know. For example, one thing Natalia says is they asked her when she was in the apartment, I think it was Dr. Phil, when she was in the apartment by herself. What did she want? She said she wanted to go home and live with the Barnetts. Well, if the Barnetts were torturing her like he claims that she was abusive as hell, if they were beating the living crap out of her and treating her like dirt, why would she want to go home and live with the Barnetts? That's a curious answer, isn't it? Or did they actually treat her very well and she was psychopathic and was trying to kill them off, and she does want to go back with them because she's like taking advantage of them? I don't know, because I can't go further than one sentence. She says one sentence, and what does that one sentence mean? And again, Dr. Phil, for example, that's also edited like crap. This wasn't, Dr. Phil was not done on a stage where it was 100% straight from beginning to end. It was edited. I have no idea what was said in all the other parts of the show that they didn't choose to air. So I can't determine anything. It's very frustrating. That's not exactly true, Lila. I think in the case, because she has dwarfism, I think that completely screwed up everything. But as far as I can see, what they came up with, the most realistic ones that I'm able to determine at all of any realism, was that she might have been 4 years older than was stated. I see no evidence that she was, 15 years older. That I don't see any evidence of. But again, it's hard to know. Really, really hard to know. Yeah. Detain them all and let Pat and Garrett interrogate them. Yeah, I would like that. I would, that's why sometimes I say when you're doing a show like this, there's no way that I can do more than I can do. It is an educational show. The idea is that you can learn from me. You can understand where the frustrations are. You can understand what I would do. You can understand what I think, see how things are. I'm not just telling a story, so it's not that easy where I can just say all the different things and tell a cool story. I can only do what I can do based on what exists. And this is a really screwed up mess. That's all I can say. One really screwed up mess. Yeah. So we'll see what Natalia has to say. But again, I think that's going to be possibly bogus. I'll probably do a short thing on that, just a catch up thing. And now that I've done this. But all I can say again, my final word before I sign off on this is: 1, I do not think she was an adult. 2, do I think it's possible her age was moved back 4 years by the Ukrainians? Possible. Do I think that they bit off more than they could chew and possibly had a child with attachment disorder and possibly was older than she was stated and therefore set them in a whole messed up direction? I think that's possible. But 100%, I think the system failed. There was no reason for the aging up. There was no reason why she couldn't have gone to foster care, be readopted. There's no reason. All those things that happened are absolutely outrageous. So the system, I think, is 100% responsible for the failures here, more so than the Barnetts, whether you like them or you don't like them. The system is atrocious, along with this really crappy HBO supposed documentary. So will we ever know the absolute truth? No, unless somebody can go back to the Ukraine and figure out exactly for absolutely 100% sure when she was born. I think that's one thing we won't know unless we have documentation as to why what they went through, what the psychologist really said, which we don't seem to have evidence of. Why she was aged up, why the system didn't help in the way they should have, help her. Unless we can get all that information, and that would take major investigation, I think, at this point in time. How much cooperation one would get from the system, how much evidence is available through public records, I do not know. Who will talk? Like, for example, the first couple that adopted Natalia would not talk. Why not? Why won't they come forward? Now, maybe it's because it's HBO and they don't trust them. I give them credit for that. She didn't talk because she was up for her trial was coming up for neglect, and the charges were dropped. But at the point the show was done, that was coming up. She didn't defend herself in this thing. Why? A, maybe because of the trial was coming up, or B, maybe because she doesn't trust HBO. So, I mean, yeah, it's really hard to know. So unless somebody was able to actually go back and do a very, very thorough investigation, I don't think we're ever going to know these answers. We're not. And so people are going to argue about it. Interesting enough, once upon a time, I think before this show came out, people were I'd say 80% of people believed that Natalia was an adult, and these people didn't do anything wrong. Now that this has come out, they've turned on them. They don't like these people anymore. Now they think Natalia was a child. So you see, the media can sway. And of course, it doesn't help that he went out and did one of the most horrific, embarrassing performances known to humankind. But so oh my gosh, so we will find out. Well, we know we won't. We won't find out. That's it. We won't ever really probably find out. But both sides are guilty of some parts. Yeah, probably. The birth mom said 2003. There is a piece of paper that says 2003. Can she prove that? By that piece of paper, yes. Can we trust that piece of paper? I don't know. I don't know where that piece of paper comes from. I don't know if it was fabricated. I don't know. I don't know. Where does that birth certificate come from? Did it come from a place where the mother and the orphanage had nothing to do with it? Or did the orphanage create the paper so they could pawn off the kid? I don't know. Don't know. And maybe the mother doesn't want to admit certain things either. Say it's Dad should be on Broadway. Oh, he does. He was a dramatic character. I'll tell you that. Very, very. Oh my God. I mean, there's if drama queen had a picture these days in the newest dictionary, his face would be there. It was embarrassing. I mean, it was absolutely awful. And there are moments when I actually like the guy, but then I'm like, oh, stop doing that, dude. Oh my God. It was bad. It really was. But I think he's got issues. I think he had issues in the marriage. I think, and the thing is, everything was supposedly so perfect in this marriage up until Natalia came. And of course, is that true? People will say, well, how is that true? It must have been some, but there is a funny thing that happens. Outside the outside world, at least, there is a point where people get together and they work together for a period of time until certain other things come into play. It can be money, it can be midlife crisis, it can be excess kind of stresses, and then everything can fall apart, and then everybody hates everybody after that. So it's interesting because you actually can have people like seem really happy for 10 years, and even they thought they were happy, and then the next 10 years, it's like a totally different story. It's unfortunate. Total meltdown. There was a lot of meltdowns here. Oh my goodness, yes, there were. I think I melted down during this show. I mean, the thing was like, there's a lot of personal things for me here because, I went through a lot of what the Barnetts went through, but I just, I was lucky. I was a very, very lucky person. So what can I do? I'm fortunate. And as far as my adoption went, I was very, very fortunate, but it could have gone another direction. And then I don't know what would have happened. What would I have done? I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. What would I have done if I had a child in my house who was terrified of, and of course, mind you, this can be biological kids too. This is not just about adoption, by the way. I should have said that earlier. I think as well. That happens. So the problem is we can't blame it on somebody else. When people have biological kids, they're like, oh, I don't know how that happened. When they're adopted kids, they're like, it's because, and they point that way. But there have been people who have very, very dangerous biological kids, and they can get killed off by them too. The difference is that they're part of the family from birth, and therefore it's kind of a different feel about that than when you have birth kids and then you bring in a child from a completely unknown situation into your house, and it all goes to hell. So that's why I think it's more, or I don't even know what the word for it is. More horrifying. I don't even know if that's even a good word for it, but it's like if you have birth children, you feel like it's just something that occurred. But when you make the choice to bring in an outside child, you felt like you didn't have to make that choice. Now, mind you, could have not made the choice to have another kid either, but the assumption is that your child was going to be normal, right? And you didn't do anything to it when it was growing up. But when you bring in an outside child, you don't know what happened to it. So you're making a choice to bring that kid into a family that's already established. And then you think, what have I done? So, yeah. If what the dad says happened really happened, it wouldn't surprise me if he has PTSD. He could have PTSD, but dude, this dude would have PTSD over the toilet flushed the wrong way. I mean, that's not PTSD that he's exhibiting. Histrionic personality disorder. Over the top, unbelievable. But yes, could he have some PTSD? Sure. But could he be exaggerating literally everything? That's the problem. He is very unreliable as a narrator. So when they say she showed up and was standing in that bedroom with a knife, was she? Was she really? Or could it be something else that happened and he's just exaggerating it? That she put poison in the coffee for Christine. Did she really put poison in the coffee? Did she really push her into a fence? Did she really throw the toys in so the kids would go into the street? I mean, are these things that he's exaggerating? Is he misinterpreting? I don't know. Or is he actually telling the truth? I mean, he could have been. It could be exactly that. He could have woke up without a girl standing there with a big fat knife, and then he is freaked. But see, the thing is, I don't know. That is the problem. Just like that one thing where, for example, where there's that video where the little girl is saying, where is that one? Let me find it. Where she's saying a thing about where is it? Hold on. Oh, this one. Why are you reading the Bible? To get rid of these evil thoughts. That's scary as crap. That's stuff, it's like, whoa, that's from a horror movie. But we don't know what came before that clip. She may have been coached to say that. She may have, maybe her background, she was as a New Order Amish, and maybe she's getting her to read the Bible because maybe her behaviors have been bad. So she's like, you should read these things. Anytime you have a thought, it could be good or it could be evil. So you read this, it helps you get rid of the evil thoughts. So now, why are you reading this? To get rid of my evil thoughts. And that's on the clip. So it's out of context. It looks scary, but it may absolutely not be. But now it's being used. Now, I don't know. I would like to know how many hours of video did HBO have access to? Did they have hours and hours and hours of her playing and being happy and being wonderful with the kids? And then they take this one clip out. You see, it's hard to know. It is. It's hard to know because it's the media and it's so frustrating. It is. It's just frustrating. All right. So anyway, yes. Florence says, I can assure you that touching a hot wire fence is not going to kill you. And I'll agree with that. Although I was feeding the donkey at our place and I went in the fence and I don't know if it was raining or whatever. And I closed the fence and I touched something and it felt like somebody had whacked me. I thought I had been hit over the back of the head really hard. And then I turned to look to see who had hit me and there was nobody there. So it was the electric fence, but yeah, I'm still here. So yeah, I'm not going to be dead. I'm not going to kill you, but I'd rather avoid the experience altogether. This is true. Yes, absolutely. Rose says she starts with no, she didn't poison her. Then Dr. Phil says it's filmed, and she comes up with an odd story about moving it to clean. Weird response. Again, yes, I don't know. But how many different things did Dr. Phil do? Because I don't trust him either or his team. Again, yeah, maybe she did think she should pour something in there. I can't say that she did not do scary things. And it could be because she had this attachment disorder. She didn't trust this new family, and she maybe had horrible thoughts of doing things to them. Maybe she was behaving in a psychopathic fashion. The question is, did she just get over that killing part of the psychopathic thing, and now she's still psychopathic, but it plays people and manipulates them better, it comes off better? Or did those things not quite happen the way they said? So she had some behavioral issues, but not to the level they thought. How do we know? And we don't. That's the problem. Oh, that's also true. There's a lot of things Natalia doesn't know as well, and that is true. And it's hard to say because she's trying to remember back to when she's a very young child in a very stressful situation. I can't remember hardly anything from, gosh, from my childhood at all. So, that she would remember everything she did when she was 6. And also, people can tell her she did things. And if they tell her over and over, you did this, you did this, you did this, maybe she thinks she did that. So again, it's very hard to tell. The girl had the same conditions, and Natalia puffed up her cheeks to make herself look younger in the same age. Yeah, I heard that. That's one, supposedly, yes. But again, does doing that to make yourself look younger, does that prove that you actually were an adult and that's why you did that? Say that gets false memories? Possibly. Yes. If you've been told you've done these things, maybe you think you've done these things. Because especially what I want to point out the most is when a child comes from a situation where they have been neglected. Being in an orphanage is usually not a good experience. I mean, there's a lot of loneliness and neglect and bullying that goes on in an orphanage situation. You'd like to think it's all lovely and there's like nuns there or something being sweet, but that's not necessarily so. So you have been taken from your mother, chucked in a crib, fed whenever you're fed. Then you're forced to grow up with a bunch of children. There's no real parents there. The damage that does to you emotionally is horrific. So what you've gone through causes so much. You talk about PTSD, that would be then. And then you go to another family who dumps you, and then you get possibly tossed around. And oh my God, if she's normal, if she grew up to be a normal adult, I would be pretty amazed. I would be amazed if she's healthy and she has a sense of humor and love in her heart. I would be really amazed. Would I believe that she may have issues? I would be more likely to think that. Is it possible she's psychopathic? It's also possible. I don't know which one it is, but if she grew up to be as healthy as she looks in her recent videos, God bless her. She survived hell, and that's amazing. And that would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. Oh, the other garage thing. She supposedly lived in a garage. And again, we have no information on the old live in a garage thing. What does living in the garage mean? See, we heard that again. One of those things. How long? Under what conditions? Is a garage really a bedroom? People make garages into bedrooms. What was it? Again, don't know. So frustrating. Lisa says, so odd though that she supposedly had been with the current family 6+ years and had zero behavioral issues. Yeah, either somehow she at that point was able, because she was older, to be happy she had these people in her life and then finally get a decent home that made her happy and she felt loved and cared for, and therefore she didn't have those problems. Or those adoptive parents or foster parents, as I think they're foster at this point, their guardians, are just the kindest, sweetest people and have a real wide range of what they can accept for behavior, and can handle children with emotional issues because they've taken in quite a few children, came from difficult circumstances. So I don't know. But it is odd if she suddenly everything was just dandy. But even if she did well all those years with this new family, you still got to wonder, how did she survive the 4 years, at least 4 years, if not 8, in the Ukrainian orphanage, and then the 2 years of the people who got rid of her without having any issues? I would be amazed if that were true. I mean, I would find it pretty unique if she did not have emotional damage. Now, extremely unique. Yeah. So, The brilliant son lives in the basement. Well, okay. Now here again, we don't know what's going on. In the show, the brilliant son, he's gotten to this point in his life. He went all over the world with his mom, Jacob, the genius kid, and his mom. He did these TED things. He went to Italy. He was all over the world, being touted as this brilliant kid. I don't know what's happened to him right now in 2023, whether he's got anything going for him, has got work going for him, what's happening. But for some reason, he's living with his dad. His dad now does have a decent house, and he's living in the basement. He's still pretty young. So I will say this. I mean, they made it look really bad because you got that, the bearded kid in the basement thing. But many a kid has gone back home, and lived with his parents and said, I'll live in the basement. I mean, that happens, Does that mean Jacob's not doing well? Does it mean Jacob I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Jacob. I don't know why Jacob's not with his mom. I don't know why Jacob's with his dad. Is it temporary? Is it 1 month? Is it 1 year? Is it 10 years? I don't know again. See, this is the problem when you have poorly put together stuff, because we don't know the truth behind anything. He could be in the basement because he's on his way to some new program he's going to go to in the fall, but he needed a place to stay for 3 months. So he just took a place in the basement. Big deal, but I don't know. I have not a clue. So, and Lex says he's really dropped off the maths and science scene. I used to follow him, nothing much to follow now. Well, it may be, Lex, because everybody likes a smart kid, but people aren't so thrilled about a smart adult. A kid can play piano when he's young. Like, oh my God, he's just a genius. And then when he's an adult and plays piano, they're like, okay, now you have to compete against all the other adults who can play good piano. Then you're just not as exciting anymore. So maybe he got to a point where he was smart, but he couldn't contribute that level of stuff when he was an adult. So now he just needs to get a regular job. He could go teach in a university. That would be reasonable. If he, got a job as a professor, he could do that. Who knows? I don't know what he likes to do. Maybe he wants to go into writing stuff. Who knows? Maybe that's why he's in the basement, because he wants to be an author of a scientific book now. We have no clue. Rose says maybe it's because the family believed her age and the other didn't. Oh, okay. Or she just had problems and been able to work through them. Or the truth is far more buried. I think we need like a lot of shovels to get to the truth. A lot of shovels. It's one of these cases where if somebody came along to me today and said, Pat Brown, we're let's say a publishing company, and even though you haven't offered this book, we heard your show, and we would like to give you $100,000 advance if you will spend the next year figuring out who the hell Natalia Grace is. Would I do it? Probably. I'd be so curious. I would be happy to go to Ukraine. I'd like to talk with every one of these people. I would like to get all the information, because it's a fascinating puzzle. Would I do it? Yes. Will I do it for zero money? No. I don't have the energy to work for nothing. Because on the idea that I'd write a book one day, But it is fascinating, and I'd like to know the answers, but I'm probably not the one that's going to get them. I'm going to say no longer boy genius. No, he's just an adult genius, and that's just not as exciting for people. It's truly sad, but that's the way. Well, sometimes I am, but but when we watch these things, I think the most important thing I'll say before I take off, because it is we're going to go celebrate my son David's birthday. He turned 40 a few days ago, and then my son Jeremy will turn 40 in 6 weeks. I always laugh because I'm like, for only 6 weeks of the year are they different ages, and the rest of the year they're twins. And people go, "Oh, you have twins?" I'm like, "Yeah, they're born 6 weeks apart." And then they go, "How does that work?" But so we're going to go celebrate his birthday tonight, next door at my daughter's house, and But the last thing I would just like to say is when you watch documentaries, you have to be really, really careful. When you see anything on the internet, when you read books, oh my God, there's so much misinformation, so much manipulation, so much disinformation, so much crap. You have to be really careful because it happens. You watch it and you go right into it and you go, oh my God, but then it's not necessarily true. And so, yeah, sorry, eating here. What is that? Yeah, agenda driven or money driven. Most of it's about money, mind you. There's a few that are agenda driven, but they're usually the money thing is huge. So what they want is to make a killing on something. And same thing is true with YouTube. It's very painful to step back from earning what you could earn by doing things that are honest. I mean, I'll remember this back a long time ago. This happened. I did my first book that I wrote, what the heck was the name of it? Killing for Sport. It was about serial killers. It's listed below in the description. You can click and buy that book. Killing for Sport. I wrote that. It was my first book that I wrote, and I was asked to be on. Oh, come on now. Give me a shock jock name. Biggest shock top of all time. Someone, you know me. I always forget names. Shock jock. What's his name? Famous one. So, oh my God, how can I? Okay, now I'm gonna have to Google. I hate it when I do this. It was in my head 3 seconds ago, and now it's gone. Okay, give me a shock jock, the biggest one of all time. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, it was Howard Stern. There's other shock jocks. I've been on their shows, but it was Howard Stern. That is correct, Howard Stern. Okay, so Howard Stern wanted me to be on his show, and he was going to promote my book, Killing for Sport. And I declined. And my literary agent went berserk on me. He's like, are you out of your damn mind? Why aren't you going on Howard Stern? I said, because I know what he's going to do when I go on his show. And I don't want to play the game he's going to want me to play when I go on his show. So I'm not going to do it. It's not like I can't take a joke. It's not like I can't have a laugh. I'm not that stiff, but I also know what he's going to do, and I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to allow him to do stuff to me that I don't want done. So I refused to do the show. And the hit I probably took off of the sales of the book was probably pretty big. So that literary agent was not happy with me. Let me put it that way, because he got 50% of my money. So he was not happy. And the publisher wasn't happy either. So that's the way it goes. But money controls a lot. So when you're looking at stuff, you have to understand that they're after the cash. And so if telling the truth and doing all the extra work, whatever, to get to real story, you lose most people. My show is not nearly as popular as a good portion of YouTube shows. And some people could say because I suck. But, other than that, it's also because I don't do the kind of shows that are the kind that bring in tons of people. So money talks. And so when you watch any of these shows, you got to understand there's a lot of the issue a lot of times behind it is how much money we're going to make. So, yeah. Well, he wasn't going to trivialize it, Howard Stern. I think it was more a case of he's going to ask me to take my clothes off. But I can't remember what. It was something to do with nudity. I can't remember what the whole thing was. Howard Stern is rude, crude, and socially unacceptable, as my grandmother would have said about him. Well, there was another shock jock, and now I've forgotten his name. I did his show. I did it by phone, and he was such a jerk that in the middle of the show, I just said, "Oh, I'm done with you," and I just hung up on him. And then like a year later, they had me on a show again, and I forgot who he was. So I started doing the show. I went, "Oh, it's you. You're the one I hung up on last time." And I hung up on him again. Oh my God. Oh Lord. But yeah, that's the way things work. So anyway, yes. So thank you for your nice wishes for my son's birthdays. Yeah, everybody's turning 40. Oh my God. In 6 weeks, I will have no child under 40. That's scary, really scary. So anyway, guys, I'd say that was kind of a cluster, what you would call it, of a show. It was the whole thing is so bizarre. It's just really hard to put all together because it's not really a proper profiling analysis. It's more as it's just looking at all the most bizarre issues that are all floating about in this show and trying to make any sense of it. I hope it made some sense. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and I'm going to go off and enjoy my evening. So see you soon.